The stars looked different through the observation deck of Celestial Station. Ambassador David Kane pressed his weathered palm against the reinforced viewport, watching Earth's pale blue light shimmer in the distance. At 55, he had negotiated peace treaties with 9 alien species, but none had felt as desperate as today's talks with the Vorthan Collective. Kane adjusted his formal black diplomatic uniform, the golden Earth insignia gleaming under the station's artificial lights. Behind him, the massive diplomatic complex buzzed with activity as representatives from across the galaxy prepared for what many believed would be humanity's final chance at survival. "Ambassador Kane?" a crisp voice called from behind. He turned to see Captain Jessica Torres approaching, her military bearing evident even in the formal setting. Torres commanded the Vengeful Storm, one of Earth's newest stealth cruisers, though it seemed pathetically small compared to the Vorthon war pyramids docked nearby. "Captain Torres, I wasn't expecting a military escort today." Kane's voice carried the weight of sleepless nights spent reviewing casualty reports from destroyed human colonies. Torres's dark eyes reflected the same exhaustion. "Admiral Steele insisted, sir. After what happened at New Geneva Colony, we can't take any chances. The Vorthans have killed 40,000 civilians in the past 6 months." Kane nodded grimly. The Vorthan Collective claimed they were cleansing illegal settlements from disputed space, but every destroyed colony had been legally established according to galactic law. Men, women, children, all vaporized without warning or mercy. The station's intercom crackled to life. "All diplomatic representatives to Conference Chamber 1. Negotiations commence in 15 minutes. Kane straightened his shoulders. "Time to see if words can save us all, Captain." The conference chamber was a marvel of neutral design, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of distant stars. Representatives from the Galactic Mediation Council took their positions around the circular room, while translators prepared their equipment for the dozens of languages that would be spoken. Kane entered to find the Vorthan delegation already seated. High Chancellor Zephyx dominated the center position, his towering 9-foot frame encased in biomechanical armor that pulsed with energy. The Vorthans were a silicon-based species, their crystalline bodies capable of reshaping themselves at will, and Zephyx had chosen a form designed to intimidate. Behind the High Chancellor sat 3 warshapers, elite Vorthan military commanders whose bodies bristled with integrated weapons. Their presence in a diplomatic meeting violated several protocols, but the Vorthans held too much power for anyone to object. "Ambassador Kane," Zephyx spoke through his translation matrix, his voice carrying harmonic frequencies that made human ears ache. "How fortunate to finally meet Earth's chief speaker face to face." "High Chancellor," Kane replied, taking his seat across from the alien leader. "I hope today begins a new chapter of peaceful coexistence between our peoples." Zephyx's crystalline features shifted into what might have been amusement. "Coexistence? Is that what humans call the contamination of pure space with their chaotic presence?" The insult hung in the air like poison. Kane had studied Vorthon psychology extensively. They viewed organic life as inherently inferior, a mistake in the universe's design that needed correction. But he had to try diplomacy first. "Those were legitimate settlements," Kane said carefully. "Families seeking new homes among the stars. Scientists studying phenomena that could benefit all species. They posed no threat to your empire." One of the warshapers leaned forward, its voice crackling with electronic malice. "Organic filth spreads like a plague. Every world you touch becomes diseased with emotion, chaos, and weakness. The galaxy requires order." Kane felt his composure slipping but forced his voice to remain steady. "We can find common ground. Humanity offers technological innovations, cultural exchange, and partnership in exploration. We don't have to be enemies." For 3 hours, Kane presented evidence, legal precedents, and appeals for basic recognition of human rights. The Vorthon delegation countered every point with cold logic and veiled threats. The other council members watched with the detached interest of species who had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. During a brief recess, Kane activated his emergency communicator to contact Captain Torres aboard the Vengeful Storm. Jessica, this isn't working. They're not negotiating in good faith. Every proposal I make, they twist into another justification for genocide. Torres's voice crackled through the secure channel. What do you need from me, Ambassador? Be ready to run. I think this is going to end badly. When negotiations resumed, High Chancellor Zefix activated a holographic display showing the terms of his final offer. The conditions appeared in stark, unforgiving text. Complete human withdrawal from all systems beyond Sol. Acceptance of Vorthon, oversight of human reproduction. Surrender of all military vessels. Mandatory sterilization of 90% of Earth's population. Kane stared at the terms in horror. This isn't a peace treaty. This is extinction with extra steps. It is mercy, Zefix replied coldly. Accept these terms and a small number of humans will be permitted to exist as a contained species. Reject them, and we will cleanse the galaxy of your chaos entirely. I need time to consult with my government, Kane said desperately. Time is a luxury the universe no longer permits. Zefix stood, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. You have witnessed our terms. Accept or be eliminated. Kane activated his emergency beacon, sending a coded message to Earth, Lidai. Response came within minutes from President Harrison. Never surrender human freedom. We stand with you completely. When the session reconvened, Kane stood before the assembled delegates. The chamber had filled with observers from dozens of species, all watching to see how this confrontation would resolve. The United Earth government cannot accept terms that would end humanity as a free species, Kane announced. We propose alternative conditions that guarantee both species security while preserving our fundamental rights. High Chancellor Zefix didn't even acknowledge the counter-proposal. Instead, he gestured to his war-shapers who began to shift their forms into weapon configurations. The human delegation has rejected survival, Zefix announced to the chamber. This negotiation is concluded. Wait, Kane called out. There must be middle ground. The cost of war will be devastating for everyone. Zefix turned back to Kane, and for the first time, Kane saw something terrifying in the alien's crystalline eyes. Not anger or hatred, but complete indifference to human suffering. War? Zefix's harmonic voice carried a note of amusement. There will be no war. Wars are fought between equals. The High Chancellor's arm transformed into an energy cannon before Kane could react. The weapon had been integrated into Zefix's very body, invisible to the station's security protocols. Let this serve as a lesson, Zefix announced to the chamber, to all species who would challenge the natural order. The energy beam struck Kane in the chest. The world exploded into pain and then darkness. His last conscious thought was of Earth, that distant blue dot, and whether humanity would survive what was coming. Captain Torres watched in horror from her ship as emergency signals flooded all communication channels. The feed from the conference chamber showed chaos, delegates fleeing, security forces arriving too late, and High Chancellor Zefix calmly walking away while his guards held back anyone who might interfere. Ambassador David Kane, Earth's voice, among the stars, was dead. Within minutes, Torres received new orders directly from Admiral Steele. Captain, you are now humanity's witness to this atrocity. Get home and tell Earth what happened. Show them that diplomacy is dead. It's time for a different kind of conversation. Torres looked at her crew, 12 of Earth's finest officers who had signed up to explore the stars, not fight wars. But war had found them anyway. All hands prepare for immediate departure, she announced over the ship's intercom. We're going home to deliver a message the galaxy will never forget. As the vengeful storm slipped away from Celestial Station, Torres took one last look at the diplomatic complex where humanity's hope for peace had died. The Vorthons had made their choice. Now it was time for them to learn what happened when you mistake human diplomacy for human weakness. Admiral Marcus Steele stood in the war room deep beneath Earth's surface, his weathered hands gripping the tactical display as reports flooded in from across human space. At 68, he had served through 3 colonial wars, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The holographic image of Ambassador Kane's execution played on repeat, each viewing stoking the fire that burned in his chest. Captain Jessica Torres stood at attention before the assembled Earth Defense Council, her uniform still bearing traces of the desperate journey home. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of 3 sleepless days pushing the vengeful storm beyond safe limits to deliver her terrible news. "Tell me everything, Captain." Admiral Steele's voice carried the weight of command earned through 40 years of military service. Every detail about what happened at Celestial Station. Torres activated her personal recorder, filling the room with High Chancellor Zefix's cold declaration before Kane's murder. Council members shifted uncomfortably as they watched their chief diplomat die for the crime of asking for human survival. President Harrison slammed his fist on the conference table. "They executed our ambassador during peace talks. This is a declaration of war by any civilized standard." "The Vorthons don't consider us civilized," Torres replied grimly. "To them, we're just an infestation to be cleaned up. They're mobilizing their entire fleet network for what they call the final cleansing." Admiral Steele studied the intelligence reports Torres had gathered during her escape. Vorthan war pyramids were converging from 12 different sectors, representing more firepower than humanity had ever faced. Traditional military thinking suggested Earth had perhaps 72 hours before systematic bombardment began. "Sir," Torres continued, "there's something else. During my reconnaissance, I detected unusual energy signatures from their command vessels. The Vorthans aren't just bringing conventional weapons, they're preparing something that could sterilize entire solar systems." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Vorthans weren't planning conquest or occupation. They intended complete extinction. General Patricia Wong, head of Earth's Special Operations Division, leaned forward. "Admiral, Project Prometheus is ready for deployment. We've been preparing for this possibility since the first colonies went dark." Steele nodded slowly. For 2 years, humanity's brightest minds had worked in secret, developing weapons specifically designed to counter alien advantages. While other species relied on overwhelming force and superior technology, humans had learned to fight smarter, not harder. "Authorization granted," Steele announced. "All units are weapons-free. Rules of engagement are suspended. Show them what happens when they mistake our diplomacy for weakness." Across human space, hidden bases activated simultaneously. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers shed their false hulls to reveal sleek warships armed with experimental weapons. Soldiers who had posed as colonists and merchants revealed themselves as elite special forces units. Captain Torres received new orders that would change everything. The vengeful storm was to rendezvous with a classified research station in the Alpha Centauri system, where humanity's secret weapon awaited testing in actual combat. Dr. Nathan Cross met Torres at the research facility, his excited demeanor contrasting sharply with the grim military atmosphere. At 34, he was humanity's leading expert in quantum warfare technology, and his breakthrough could tip the scales of the coming conflict. "Captain Torres, welcome to Project Hellfire." Dr. Cross gestured toward a chamber containing devices that hummed with barely contained energy. "We've developed something the Vorthans have never encountered before." He led her to a torpedo-sized weapon that seemed to bend light around itself. "We call them phase-shift warheads. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing them to bypass conventional shields and armor. One of these can disable a Vorthon war pyramid." Torres examined the weapon with professional interest. "How many do we have?" 12 prototypes, Cross admitted. "We haven't had time for mass production, but field testing suggests they're devastatingly effective against silicon-based targets." "Then we'd better make them count," Torres replied. "What's our first target?" Admiral Steele's voice crackled through the communication system. "Captain Torres, you're heading to the Kepler Station supply depot. Intelligence indicates it's the primary staging area for the Vorthon offensive. Destroy it, and we buy Earth precious time." The vengeful storm approached Kepler Station through an asteroid field, using the rocky debris to mask their approach. The Vorthon facility hung in space like a crystalline spider, its geometric patterns both beautiful and menacing. Defense platforms bristled with energy weapons while war pyramids docked at massive bays. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blake, Torres's tactical officer, reported the enemy strength. 16 heavy cruisers, 8 battle pyramids, and automated defense grids. Conservative estimate puts their firepower at 30 times our own. Good thing we're not fighting fair, Torres replied, remembering Admiral Steele's words. She activated shipwide communications. All hands, this is the captain. Today we answer for Ambassador Kane's murder. The Vorthans think they can terrorize humanity into submission. They're about to learn why that was a mistake. The vengeful storm emerged from the asteroid field like a predator striking from ambush. For 20 seconds they remained undetected, closing distance at maximum speed. Then Vorthan sensors registered their presence, and alarms echoed across the enemy formation. Multiple contacts launching from the depot, Blake announced. They're scrambling everything they have. Fire, Torres commanded. 6 phase-shift warheads streaked toward their targets, flickering between dimensions as Vorthon point defense systems opened fire. The alien weapons blazed uselessly at empty space while the human torpedoes materialized just long enough to strike their targets. The first warhead hit a battle pyramid amidships, phasing through its crystalline armor before detonating inside the ship's core. The explosion tore through 17 decks, venting atmosphere and debris into space. The second and third warheads struck a heavy cruiser, breaking its geometric structure and sending fragments spinning in all directions. Within 90 seconds, 8 Vorthon vessels had been reduced to expanding clouds of crystal dust. The remaining fleet turned toward the vengeful storm with coordinated fury, but Torres was already moving. "Emergency jump now," she ordered. The vengeful storm vanished in a flash of twisted space-time, leaving behind confused enemies and a supply depot that would never again serve as a symbol of Vorthon military might. The message was clear. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Light years away, High Chancellor Zefix received reports of the attack with something approaching surprise. The organic species had destroyed a major military installation with a single vessel. Their technology was more advanced than initial assessments had indicated. "Increase the timetable," he commanded his warshapers. "Begin systematic bombardment of human colonies immediately. We cannot allow this infestation time to spread its chaos." But across the galaxy, similar attacks were occurring simultaneously. Human sleeper agents activated in 20 different systems, striking at Vorthon infrastructure with precision and determination. Supply lines collapsed, communication networks went dark, and military installations vanished in coordinated strikes that left no evidence of human involvement. The Vorthon Empire, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies through superior firepower, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stand still and be destroyed. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, they faced opponents who adapted, improvised, and struck back with increasing effectiveness. Captain Torres returned to Earth to find Admiral Steele planning humanity's most audacious operation yet. The Vorthons were gathering their main fleet for a decisive strike against Earth itself. It was time to show them that humans didn't just fight to survive, they fought to win. "Captain," Steele announced, "you've just volunteered for the most important mission in human history. We're taking the war to their home system. It's time the galaxy learned what happens when you back humanity into a corner." The storm had been unleashed, and it was only growing stronger. The Vorthon war fleet assembled at the edge of human space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. High Chancellor Zefix stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crystal Dominion, watching through the massive viewport as over 400 war pyramids arranged themselves in perfect geometric formation. Each vessel was a masterpiece of silicon-based engineering, their crystalline hulls reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt human eyes to observe. Captain Jessica Torres studied the tactical display aboard the vengeful storm as intelligence reports flooded in from reconnaissance drones. The Vorthon Armada represented the combined military might of 17 conquered species, all serving the collective's vision of galactic order through elimination of chaos. "They're not just planning to destroy Earth," reported Lieutenant Commander Blake, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Long-range sensors show planet-killer weapons. They intend to shatter our world completely, turn it into an asteroid field." Torres nodded grimly. The Vorthons had learned from humanity's recent strikes. Instead of gradual conquest, They would end the human problem with overwhelming force applied all at once. No evacuation would be possible. No survivors would escape to rebuild elsewhere. Deep in Earth's most classified research facility, Dr. Victoria Cross was making final adjustments to humanity's last desperate gambit. Unlike her colleague Nathan Cross, who had developed the phase-shift weapons, Victoria specialized in neural warfare technology. For 3 years, she had studied captured Vorthan technology, searching for weaknesses in their collective consciousness network. The breakthrough came 6 months ago, she explained to Admiral Steele as they walked through the heavily guarded laboratory. Vorthan minds are quantum entangled across vast distances, allowing instantaneous communication and coordination. But quantum networks have a critical vulnerability. She led him to a device no larger than a briefcase, its surface covered in warning labels and radiation symbols. Energy patterns danced within its transparent core, contained by magnetic fields that hummed with barely controlled power. We call it the neural cascade disruptor. It generates quantum interference specifically tuned to Vorthan brain patterns. In theory, it can sever their collective consciousness, leaving each individual isolated and confused. Admiral Steele studied the device with the eye of a military strategist. What's the catch, Doctor? Delivery range, Victoria admitted. The weapon only works at extremely close proximity. Someone would need to get within 2 kilometers of the enemy command ship and activate it manually. Given the size of their fleet, it's essentially a suicide mission. Then we'd better find someone crazy enough to volunteer, Steele replied without hesitation. Meanwhile, in the deepest levels of a Vorthan prison facility, an unexpected ally was preparing to risk everything. Kyrix 9 had been a war shaper before, his exile stripped of rank and imprisoned for the crime of questioning High Chancellor Zefix's genocidal policies. Unlike most of his species, Kyrix had developed something resembling individual conscience. Through encrypted quantum transmissions, he had been secretly communicating with human intelligence operatives for months. The massacre at Celestial Station had convinced him that his own species had become a cancer on the galaxy. The collective consciousness has 3 primary nodes, Kyrix transmitted during a brief communication window. Destroy the command node on Zefix's flagship, and their entire fleet coordination collapses. They'll be reduced to fighting as individuals instead of a unified force. Captain Torres received the intelligence while preparing for what everyone assumed would be humanity's final battle. The plan was audacious beyond belief. Infiltrate the heart of the enemy fleet, deploy the neural cascade disruptor, and somehow escape before the Vorthan armada tore itself apart. Ma'am, Dr. Victoria Cross reported as she personally oversaw the weapons installation aboard the Vengeful Storm. I should mention that the disruptor's effects are unpredictable. Some Vorthans might go completely catatonic, others could become violently aggressive without collective restraint. And there's a small chance the quantum cascade could spread beyond the immediate target area. How small? Torres asked. Approximately 12% probability of affecting all silicon-based life within a 50 light-year radius, Victoria admitted quietly. Torres felt the weight of potential genocide settle on her shoulders. If the weapon worked too well, humanity might win by becoming everything they claim to oppose. But if it failed, Earth would be reduced to cosmic dust within hours. Load the weapon, she decided. We'll worry about moral implications after we survive. Across the galaxy, unexpected allies began revealing themselves. The hegemony of free traders, a coalition of merchant species who had suffered under Vorthan. Economic oppression offered intelligence and supply routes. The Christek Rebellion, survivors of a species the Vorthans had nearly exterminated, provided advanced sensor technology that could penetrate collective jamming. Most surprising was the emergence of the Silent Resistance, a network of enslaved species within Vorthan territory who had been planning rebellion for decades. They couldn't fight openly, but they could provide distractions and create chaos behind enemy lines when the moment came. High Chancellor Zefix received reports of these developing alliances with cold calculation. The organic species were forming coalitions, just as they had during previous galactic conflicts. Such alliances always collapsed when faced with superior force and unified purpose. Begin the advance, he commanded his warshapers. Time to demonstrate why chaos cannot triumph over order. The Vorthan armada moved toward Earth like a crystalline tide of destruction. Their formation was mathematically perfect, each ship positioned to provide maximum overlapping fields of fire while maintaining optimal defensive postures. No force in galactic history had ever broken such coordination. As the enemy fleet approached the outer solar system, Captain Torres made her final preparations. The vengeful storm had been modified beyond recognition, its hull reinforced with experimental armor while its engines had been boosted to dangerous levels. If they survived long enough to reach the enemy flagship, the ship probably wouldn't survive the return journey. "All hands," Torres announced over the ship's intercom. "We're about to attempt something that military historians will either call the most brilliant operation in human history or the most spectacular failure. Either way, Ambassador Kane's murder will be answered today." Dr. Victoria Cross worked frantically in the engineering section, making final calibrations to the neural cascade disruptor. The weapon's quantum core pulsed with energies that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. One miscalculation could tear a hole in space-time itself. "Captain," she reported through the communication system, "the disruptor is armed and stable. But remember, we need to be within 2 kilometers of their command ship for maximum effect, and we need to survive long enough to activate it." "Then we'd better not disappoint Dr. Cross," Torres replied, her voice carrying the confidence that had made her one of Earth's youngest starship commanders. The final battle began when Earth's defense platforms opened fire on the approaching Vorthan fleet. Massive energy beams lanced across space, striking crystalline hulls that absorbed and redirected the attacks with contemptuous ease. The Vorthans didn't even bother to return fire immediately, confident that humanity's weapons were no threat to their superior technology. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Hidden among the asteroids of the outer system, human stealth ships began their approach. Not the massive dreadnoughts that traditional military doctrine demanded, but small, fast vessels armed with phase-shift weapons and operated by crews who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a one-way mission. Captain Torres led the charge, the vengeful storm accelerating toward the heart of the enemy formation at speeds that pushed both ship and crew beyond safe limits. Behind her, 23 other vessels followed, each one carrying enough firepower to cripple a Vorthan war pyramid if they could get close enough. The galaxy held its breath as 2 fundamentally different philosophies of warfare collided in the cold vacuum of space. Order against chaos, collective consciousness against individual determination, crystalline perfection against organic adaptability. The outcome would determine not just humanity's survival, but the future of every free species in the galaxy. The space around Earth erupted into chaos as the largest battle in galactic history began. Captain Jessica Torres gripped her command chair as the vengeful storm plunged through the Vorthan formation, enemy fire lighting up the darkness like deadly fireworks. Phase-shift torpedoes streaked from human vessels, materializing inside crystalline hulls to tear apart war pyramids from within. High Chancellor Zefix watched from his flagship's bridge as his perfect formation began to crumble. The organic species were fighting with desperate creativity, their small ships dancing between his massive war pyramids like insects avoiding swatting hands. Every time his gunners locked onto a target, the humans would vanish into dimensional folds or hide behind debris from their own destroyed vessels. "Sir," reported Warshaper Vex Prime, his crystalline features flickering with confusion, "we're losing ships faster than tactical projections indicated. The humans have weapons that shouldn't exist." Zefix's form shifted to a more aggressive configuration, weapon pods emerging from his torso. "Then we accelerate the cleansing, begin bombardment of the third planet immediately." Planet-killer weapons on 12 different war pyramids began charging, their energy signatures visible to every sensor in the solar system. In 6 minutes, Earth would be reduced to molten slag and scattered asteroids. Humanity had 6 minutes to save their homeworld or die trying. Torres pushed her ship's engines beyond safe limits, the hull groaning under stresses that would have torn apart lesser vessels. Behind her, Lieutenant Commander Blake coordinated with the other human ships through quantum-encrypted communications that the Vorthans couldn't intercept.